Welcome back to the deep dive. It is genuinely great to have you with us today. We are tackling a subject that I think, a huge number of us just take for granted.
Oh, absolutely. We interact with it every single day.
Right, we trust our lives to it, but when you actually peel back the layers and look at what makes it tick, it is absolutely mind-bending. We are talking about the modern automobile.
It is a fascinating topic, and honestly, um, it's one of the most exciting areas in technology right now because it sits right at this violent intersection of heavy mechanical industry, steel and rubber, and cutting-edge nanometer scale silicon.
And I don't mean the horsepower or the torque or the quality of the leather seats. I mean the cliche that everyone uses but nobody really stops to explain, which is the concept of the car as a supercomputer on wheels.
Right.
We hear that phrase all the time, right? It's in every press release, every commercial. But today we are going to actually look under the hood metaphorically and literally at the architecture that makes that possible. We are dissecting the brain and the eyes of the software-defined vehicle.
It is a cliche for a reason, though. I mean, the transformation is real, and it is happening right now. We are moving away from cars that are just, mechanical beasts with a few chips sprinkled in for the radio or the power windows, to machines that are fundamentally digital first.
Yeah.
The code is becoming just as important as the chassis, maybe even more so.
Exactly. And the problem or the challenge, I should say, is massive. I think people assume, oh, it's just a bigger iPhone on wheels.
Right, which it definitely isn't.
But it's not. We are currently in the middle of a huge architectural shift. We are moving from this old world where a car had maybe 100 tiny separate computers called ECUs scattered all over the place. One for the door lock, one for the wiper, one for the engine.
So it was a wiring nightmare.
To what's called a zonal architecture.
Yeah.
Essentially big central brains handling everything. But that creates two huge headaches.
Right. It consolidates power, which is efficient, but it concentrates risk.
First, if the car is driving itself or even just helping you drive, how do we ensure it sees reality perfectly? Better than a human, even. It has to.
Because if we are trusting a computer to drive, it can't just be good enough. It has to be superhuman.
That is the sensory challenge. The eyes.
And second, if you have one central brain running your brakes and your Spotify playlist on the exact same chip, how do you make sure the Spotify playlist doesn't crash the brakes?
Yeah, that's the big one.
Or that a hacker can't get in through the radio connection and steer the car into a ditch?
That is the isolation and security challenge. The brain.
Yeah.
And that is where things get really technical and really interesting. You have to build walls inside the silicon itself to prevent that nightmare scenario.
So for today's deep dive, we have pulled a stack of heavy-hitting technical documents. We've got architectural breakdowns from NXP. These are the folks building the brain, focusing on secure computing, virtualization, and isolation.
Incredible stuff in there.
And we have deep technical specs from onsemi, they are the eyes, working on next-generation image sensors and HDR technology. It's a great pairing, because you really cannot have one without the other. You can have the smartest brain in the world, the most powerful processor, but if the eyes are blind, you crash.
Right.
And you can have eagle eyes, 8K resolution, but if the brain is slow to react or insecure, you also crash. They are entirely symbiotic.
Our mission today is to understand that invisible layer of technology, the stuff that allows a car to drive itself at 70 miles per hour through a dark tunnel, emerge into blinding sunlight, spot a brick on the road, and not get hacked, all in milliseconds.
Let's do it.
Let's start with the eyes of the machine. When we talk about cameras in cars, I think most people just think, oh, it's like a GoPro strapped to the bumper. Or maybe the backup camera that helps you not hit the trash can.
Exactly, a convenience feature.
But looking at the onsemi material, the stakes here are completely different from consumer photography.
Right.
We are talking about level 3 autonomous driving and above.
Right. Context is everything here. In consumer photography, like on your phone or your DSLR, the goal is a pleasing image.
Make me look good.
Exactly. If the sky's a little blown out or the shadows are a little crushed, meaning they're too dark, it's fine as long as the face looks good. We apply filters to make it look nice. In autonomous driving, the camera isn't taking pictures for Instagram. It is the primary sensor for detecting lanes, traffic signs, and most importantly, VRUs.
VRUs, that's a new acronym for me.
Vulnerable road users. Pedestrians, cyclists, children playing near the curb. The system has to detect a child or a brick specifically. The documents mention an object as small as 0.15 meters in height on the road. and it has to do it with absolute certainty.
0.15 meters. That's tiny. That's like a large grapefruit or a small brick.
Exactly. If you hit a brick at highway speeds, you lose a tire, you lose control, you could flip the car.
Yeah.
If you hit a child, well, we know the consequences. The sensor doesn't get to say, I think that might be something. It needs to know. It's detection, classification, and ranging, all happening instantly.
And these sensors are incredibly complex. I was reading that the latest on-semi image sensor packs over 200 million transistors. That is a staggering number for a camera sensor. I usually think of processors having transistors, not cameras.
It is. An image sensor is actually one of the most complex semiconductor devices in existence. It's a hybrid device. You have the analog pixel array, which is physically catching photons and turning them into electrons. Quantum physics in action, stacked directly on top of a digital logic stack that processes that signal.
So it's not just a lens in some film?
Not at all. It is a marvel of engineering.
Yeah.
It's not just film anymore. It's a computer in its own right.
So let's talk about the specific problems these 200 million transistors are trying to solve. The documents highlight something called the tunnel exit problem. This feels like the ultimate test for a camera.
It is the classic high dynamic range, or HDR, scenario. Imagine you are driving. You're inside a tunnel. It is relatively dark, lit by those orange sodium lights. You're approaching the exit. Outside, it is a blazing hot summer day, high noon.
Right. I've been there. You squint as you come out. You almost have to shield your eyes.
Exactly. As a human driver, your eyes adjust pretty quickly, but even you have a moment of blindness. For a standard camera, this is a nightmare. The contrast difference between the dark tunnel interior and the bright sunlit exterior is massive.
It's trying to see both at once.
Yes, we measure this in decibels of dynamic range. If the camera exposes for the tunnel, so the shutter stays open longer to catch the light inside, the exit is just a wall of white light. It's blown out. You can't see anything outside.
Okay, that makes sense.
But if it exposes for the sunlight outside short shutter speed to handle the brightness, the inside of the tunnel becomes pitch black. You lose all detail of the tunnel walls or lane markers inside.
And if there's a car stopped just outside the tunnel or a car stopped just inside?
You don't see it until it's too late. That is why dynamic range is so critical. Standard competitors usually hover around 120 to 132 dB. The onsemi source emphasizes that for safety, especially in that tunnel scenario, you need 150 dB.
150 dB, that's the magic number. Why that specific number?
That is the threshold where the sensor can capture the texture of the dark tunnel wall and the clouds in the bright sky simultaneously without saturation or loss of data. It ensures the AI sees the car in front, regardless of the lighting contrast.
So it's not just about making a pretty picture of the clouds.
No, it sounds like a spec sheet number, but in reality, it's the difference between seeing a stopped truck and seeing a white wall. It's about not losing information at the extremes.
Okay, so that's the lighting issue. But there is another menace on the road that I hadn't even thought about until I read this. The flicker menace. LFM.
LED flicker mitigation. This is a huge issue as LED lights become standard on our roads.
Explain this to me. Why do LEDs flicker? To my eyes, the traffic light looks solid red. The brake lights on the car in front of me look solid.
To your eyes, yes, because your brain has persistence of vision. It smooths things out. But LEDs, especially in traffic lights and modern car headlights, often use pulse width modulation PWM to control brightness.
What does that mean practically?
You don't just stay on. They turn on and off hundreds of times a second.
So they're strobing.
Ideally, yes. If they want to be 50% bright, they on for half the time and off for half the time, switching back and forth incredibly fast.
A camera.
A camera captures a frame in a fraction of a second. It has a shutter speed.
I see where this is going. It's like when you film a TV screen and it looks weird.
Exactly. If the camera's shutter happens to be open during the tiny fraction of a second that the LED is in its off cycle, the image it captures shows the traffic light as dark.
So the car thinks the red light is off.
Or it thinks the car in front of you has suddenly vanished because its taillights disappeared.
That is terrifying.
It is. Misinterpreting a red light or a braking car is a critical failure. Imagine your autonomous car accelerating because it thinks the car ahead turned off its brake lights, when really, the camera just caught the off cycle of the LED. Wow! So you need a sensor that can mitigate this. And this brings us to the technological solution onsemi is pitching, which is super exposure.
Yeah, they compare super exposure to the old ways. I didn't realize there were different ways to do HDR. I thought HDR was just HDR.
No, there are several methods. The most common older method is multiple exposure. You take a short exposure for the highlights, a long exposure for the shadows, and you stitch them together.
Like my phone does when I take a picture of a sunset.
Exactly. But your phone's subject is usually standing still.
Hmm.
In a car moving at 60 miles per hour, taking 3 sequential photos takes time. In that time, the car has moved.
So the images don't line up perfectly.
Right, and when you stitch them, you get ghosting. Motion artifacts. The car looks like a blur. For an AI trying to detect edges to know, where does the car end and the road begin, ghosting is confusing. It creates false objects or blurs out real ones.
And the other old way, they call it split diode.
That splits the pixel physically. You have a big subpixel for low light and a small subpixel for bright light.
Mhm.
It works, but you lose light sensitivity because you're chopping up the pixel area. It creates low light issues and something called fixed pattern noise. It's a compromise.
So how does super exposure fix this?
On Semi's Hyperlux technology uses a pixel architecture that captures the highlight and low light information simultaneously or near simultaneously in a way that avoids the motion artifacts of multiple exposures but keeps the full light sensitivity.
Okay.
And crucially, it handles that LED flicker we talked about. It ensures that even if the exposure is short, it captures enough information to know the light is on,
They call it a set and forget system.
which is a huge benefit for the system designers. They don't need complex software loops constantly trying to adjust exposure up and down depending on the lighting. The sensor just handles it natively.
And that frees up the brain to do other things.
Exactly. That speeds up reaction time. It simplifies the image signal processing pipeline, which reduces overall system latency.
Speaking of reaction time and speed, let's talk about resolution, because this was a surprise to me. I look at the specs for the latest smartphones, and it's all 100 megapixels, 200
The
megapixels.
spec wars.
Yeah. So I assumed a self-driving car would need, like, a gigapixel camera, but the NXP and onsemi material says, no, that is the megapixel fallacy.
It is a very common misconception.
Mm.
We are trained as consumers to think big number equals good. But in the automotive world, bigger isn't always better when it comes to pixel count. In fact, simply chasing megapixels can actually make the system much worse.
Why not? Wouldn't more detail be better for an AI to see a pedestrian?
It comes down to the physics of light. Sensors have a fixed physical size, usually defined by the lens format like 1 over 1.8 inch.
Right, you can't put a massive telescope mirror on the front of a sedan.
Exactly. So if you cram 100 million pixels onto a small chip, each individual pixel has to be tiny.
Tiny buckets for catching rain.
That's the perfect analogy. Imagine you have a bucket to catch rain. A big bucket catches a lot of water easily. A thimble catches very little. A tiny pixel catches fewer photons.
And fewer photons is bad.
Fewer photons means a lower signal-to-noise ratio, or SNR. In low light, like a country road at night with no streetlights, those tiny pixels get noisy and grainy because they aren't catching enough light to form a clear signal.
So you just get a high-resolution image of static.
You get a high-resolution image of noise. That is absolutely useless to an AI.
So there's a trade-off.
Always. Higher resolution also means more data to process. Moving 100 megapixels of data 30 times a second requires massive bandwidth over the car's internal wiring. Processing it requires massive computing power from the central brain
Which takes power.
that generates heat and consumes electricity. In an electric vehicle, you don't want to burn range just to process extra pixels you don't even need.
So what is the sweet spot? The documents get very specific here. They point to 8.3 megapixels, specifically the AR0823 sensor.
8.3 MP is the current Goldilocks resolution for Level 2 Plus and Level 3 driving. It offers a 4K resolution, essentially 3840 by 2160.
Why is that the magic number?
Because it allows for a wide field of view about 120 degrees while still providing enough pixel density to detect a pedestrian at roughly 230 meters and separate the two headlights of an oncoming car at 400 meters.
400 meters? That is a long way. That's a quarter mile.
It gives the car plenty of time to make a decision at highway speeds. If you are going 70 miles per hour, you cover ground fast. You need that long-range vision. And the key isn't just the pixel count, it's the pixel quality.
What do you mean by quality?
Even though the pixel size is shrinking down to less than 2.1 micrometers,
Yeah.
the technology is focused on maintaining the SNRI.
SNRI. Oh, you threw another acronym at me. I thought we just talked about SNR.
Sorry, it gets deep quickly. SNRI stands for Signal-to-Noise Ratio Ideal Observer. It is a very specific metric. It's different from normal SNR.
How so?
Normal SNR is just physics. It's the ratio of light signal to electrical noise. SNRI is about perception. It's not about, does this look good to a human eye? It's, How confident can a computer algorithm be that this blob of pixels is a person and not a shadow?
Ah, so it's a metric for the AI, not for us.
Exactly. And what's the passing grade?
The documents say an SNRI of 5.
Yes, an SNRI 5 is the threshold for 99% detection confidence. If your SNRI drops below that, your AI starts guessing.
And you do not want your car guessing.
You want it knowing.
No, you definitely do not want it guessing if that's a shadow or a person. This brings us to the garbage in, garbage out concept the document mentions.
Precisely. The sensor feeds the AI model. If the sensor data is raw, clean, and has high dynamic range thanks to that hyperlux tech we discussed, the computer vision algorithms work efficiently.
Because they don't have to clean up the mess first.
Right. If the data is noisy or ghosted because of bad HDR, the AI has to work overtime to filter it, or it just outright fails. High-quality raw data is the absolute fuel for AI. You simply cannot fix bad sensor data with good software code.
One last stat from the eye section that blew me away was the efficiency. The 3-megapixel sensor, the AR0341, uses only 272 milliwatts of power. That seems incredibly low.
It is. It's about 20 to 40% lower than competitors. When you have 10 or 12 cameras on a car, front, side, rear, surround view, driver monitoring inside the cabin, that power savings really adds up.
Because it's not just one camera, it's a whole array.
Exactly. And less power means less heat. Heat is the natural enemy of image sensors. Hot sensors get noisy physically. So running cool actually helps you see better. It also allows for smaller packaging so the cameras don't look like giant warts on the outside of the car.
So we have these incredible eyes. They're seeing 400 meters out. They are handling blinding tunnels. They are filtering out flickering LEDs. They are generating massive streams of high-quality 8-megapixel data. Now, we have to do something with it.
Advise to send it to the brain.
This is where we shift gears to the NXP documents and the centralized architecture.
This is the second half of the revolution. We're moving from decentralized chaos to centralized order.
Explain that shift for me, because cars have had computers for a long time. My car from 10 years ago has a computer.
Historically, yes, but it was additive. It was decentralized. If you wanted a new feature in a car, say automatic wipers, the engineers added a new physical box, a new ECU, electronic control unit, with its own little chip and its own wiring.
Just bolted it on.
Right. Then you wanted power seats, another box, another chip, advanced cruise control, another box. Modern cars ended up with 100 or more of these individual boxes all over the vehicle.
And the wiring connecting them all.
It was a nightmare. The wiring harness actually became the heaviest single component in the car after the chassis and the engine. It was literal miles of copper winding through the frame.
And I imagine a software update nightmare too. You couldn't just hit update car. You'd have to update the wiper ECU, then the engine ECU separately.
It was completely unmanageable. The new architecture is what we call zonal. You have powerful zone gateways that collect data from sensors in different geographic parts of the car, like zone front left, zone rear right.
Okay, acting like local hubs.
Exactly. And they funnel all that data over a high-speed network to a massive central vehicle processor. One big, incredibly powerful brain.
But this creates that conflict we teased in the intro. If this one brain is doing everything, it's handling safety-critical tasks, like deciding when to slam on the brakes, and non-safety tasks, like connecting to the cloud for navigation or playing movies for the kids in the back seat.
And that is terrifying from a security standpoint.
Why?
You have the Wild West of the internet-connected infotainment system running on the exact same silicon chip as the Fort Knox vault of the braking and steering system.
Oh.
Infotainment needs to be open, flexible, run third-party Android apps, connect to 5G networks. Safety needs to be locked down, rigid, mathematically proven, and failure-proof.
So how do we stop the Wild West from robbing the bank, or the buggy Android app from crashing the operating system that runs the brakes?
You need isolation. And not just software firewalls, because software can be hacked. You need hardware-level isolation. This is where NXP's architecture, specifically using the hardware security engine, the HSE, and the extended resource domain controller, the XRDC, comes into play.
Okay, let's unpack this isolation. The documents talk a lot about two worlds. The ARM trust zone architecture. This sounds like sci-fi.
Think of the main processor as a large building. ARM Trust Zone physically divides that building into two distinct separate wings. You have the normal world and the secure world.
The normal world is where the party is.
Yes, that's where the rich operating systems live. Linux, Android, your third-party apps, your GPS mapping, your user interface. It's complex, it's huge, and frankly, because it's so big, it's prone to bugs and vulnerabilities. It has millions of lines of code.
It's impossible for it to be perfectly secure.
Exactly. And the secure world.
What's in there?
That is the TLC, the Trusted Execution Environment. It is a minimalist, locked-down bunker. Only trusted, cryptographically verified code runs here. Cryptograph of master keys, payment credentials, and safety-critical decisions live here.
So it's much smaller.
It has a tiny code base, maybe a few thousand lines, which makes it possible to mathematically verify that it has no bugs.
How does the physical chip know which world it's in at any given microsecond? Is it just a software flag? Like, can a hacker just flip a switch in the code and say, hey, I'm secure now?
No, it's much deeper than that. It's the NS bit, the non-secure bit. It's a physical hardware-level tag on every single transaction on the system bus.
Every time data moves.
Every single time. When the processor tries to access memory or talk to a peripheral, the hardware controller checks that bit.
So if I'm a hacker in the normal world, in Linux, and I try to grab a file in memory labeled secure, the hardware itself says access denied.
Before the software even registers what happened, the hardware physically blocks the electrical signal. You cannot hack physics. Even if you have root access in Linux, even if you are the ultimate admin of the normal world, you cannot touch the secure world memory. The hardware simply won't route the request.
But the worlds have to talk, right? They can't be totally blind to each other. Linux needs to ask the secure world to do things like maybe decrypting a downloaded map update securely.
They do. But you can't just jump over the wall. You need a gatekeeper. This transition is handled by the EL3 level, exception level 3.
The documents mention something called the SMC.
The secure monitor call. Think of it like a formal petition to the court. A user app, which runs at EL0, asks the Linux kernel at EL1 to do something secure. The kernel knows it can't enter the secure world itself, so it issues an SMC.
Like submitting a form.
Yes. This instruction physically pauses the normal world execution and wakes up the monitor at EL3.
The monitor is the supreme authority.
Exactly. It's like the bouncer at an exclusive club or the customs agent at a heavily guarded border. The monitor checks the credentials. Who is asking? What are they asking for? Is this a valid predefined request?
And if it is?
If yes, it switches the processor context, literally saving the entire state of the normal world into a safe place and loading the state of the secure world, and then hands the request to OPT.
OPT. That sounded like a Star Wars droid when I first read it. What exactly is OPT?
It stands for Open Portable Trusted Execution Environment. It is the operating system of the secure world.
Okay.
It's an open source project maintained by an organization called Lenoro. It runs alongside Linux on the same chip, but is completely untouchable by Linux. It takes the request, executes the sensitive task like verifying a password or signing a breaking command, and then hands just the safe result back to the normal world.
So it's a verified, clean room for dangerous tasks.
Exactly. It allows us to perform trusted operations even on a device that might be completely infected with malware in the normal world. The malware can't see what OPT is doing.
Now, all of this assumes the car started up cleanly in the first place. If a hacker broke into my garage and replaced the core operating system while the car was turned off, we'd be in serious trouble when I turned it on.
Right.
This brings us to Secure Boot. The documents call it the chain of trust.
Secure Boot is like a massive cryptographic relay race where you don't pass the baton until you have thoroughly checked the next runner's ID card, fingerprints, and DNA.
Walk us through that sequence. I get into my car in the morning and press the engine start button. What actually happens inside the silicon before the screen even lights up?
The main processor, the big fast brain, doesn't actually start immediately. The HSE, the hardware security engine we mentioned, wakes up first. It is the root of trust.
It's the first thing awake.
Yes. It has a tiny piece of code permanently burned into its silicon at the factory that physically cannot be changed. Immutable memory.
Step 1.
The HSE looks at the next piece of code it needs to load, usually the bootloader. It reads that code and calculates its digital hash, which is like a unique mathematical fingerprint of that exact software.
Okay, so it takes a fingerprint.
Then it compares that calculated fingerprint to a known valid signature stored safely in its secure memory.
Matching the ID.
Right. If the hash matches perfectly, it means the code hasn't been tampered with. Not a single 1 or 0 has been altered by a hacker. It's authentic. The HSE then releases the reset line for the main core. It allows the main brain to wake up and run that verified code.
And if it doesn't match, if I inserted a malicious USB stick into the dashboard and somehow tried to overwrite the bootloader overnight,
The math fails. The hashes don't match. The HSE simply refuses to start the main core.
It just stays off.
The car is a brick, but it's a safe brick. It won't run compromised code. It will likely throw a security error to the mechanic, but it will not let you drive a hacked car.
That is very reassuring. But the documents go even deeper into this concept of identity. They talk about DICE, Device Identifier Composition Engine. This part was a bit abstract for me. What did they mean by compound identity?
This is truly fascinating, and it's the future of hardware security. Usually we think of a device's identity as just a serial number. I am car number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Right, like a VIN number.
But DICE says identity should be who I am physically, plus what software I am currently running.
Okay, that's a twist.
Think of it like a human. You have your DNA that's fixed, born with you, but you also have your current health status. Are you sick today? Are you vaccinated?
So the car has DNA.
Every single chip has a unique device secret, a UDS, born in the factory. It's physically embedded inside the silicon. That's the DNA. But as the car boots up, DICE takes that secret hardware key and mathematically mixes it with the measurements, the hashes of all the software layers being loaded.
So my identity changes if I update my software.
Exactly. If you download an over-the-air update from the manufacturer, your compound identity changes to reflect the new state. This is vital for something called attestation.
Attestation. What's that in this context?
When your car connects to the cloud server, maybe to pay a toll automatically or to download a high-definition map for self-driving, the cloud asks, are you really car number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and have you been hacked?
And because of DICE, the car can answer definitively.
The car presents a cryptographic certificate that proves I am car 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 based on my hardware DNA, and I am running the official unhacked version of the software based on my boot measurements.
And if a hacker changed just one line of code in the radio app?
The mathematical measurement changes, the compound identity changes, and the cloud server immediately rejects the connection. Access denied.
It's like an immune system for the car's digital soul. It knows when it's sick.
That is a very poetic way to put it, but yes,
Yeah.
practically speaking, that's what it is. It creates an unbroken trust link from the factory floor through the hardware, up through the software, all the way to the cloud service.
Amazing. Moving on to virtualization, we established that we have one big central brain now, but we have lots of different minds needing to use it. The infotainment, the digital dashboard, the autopilot, the telematics connecting to the cell network. We need to share the brain without them fighting or crashing each other.
Enter the hypervisor. It runs at EL2 exception level 2.
What's the best analogy here to understand a hypervisor?
The hypervisor is essentially the apartment building manager. It gives each tenant, which in this case we call a virtual machine, or VM, their own isolated room. The tenant inside the room thinks they own the entire building. They have their own virtual memory, their own virtual processors. They don't even know they're neighbors. But the manager, the hypervisor, ensures they don't drill holes through the walls into the next apartment.
So the infotainment system running Android thinks it has the whole processor to itself, but it's really just trapped in a virtual box.
Right. And the autopilot system is running in another, completely separate box. If the infotainment box catches fire, meaning Android crashes because of a bad app, the manager, the hypervisor, contains the fire.
It doesn't spread.
Exactly. The autopilot box just keeps running smoothly right next door. This is absolutely critical because you cannot have your power steering failing just because your Maps app froze up.
But there is a technical snag here regarding encryption that the documents point out. The NXP material highlights a specific conflict between standard Linux and the hardware security engine in a virtualized world.
This is the key handle issue. It's a really clever solution to a tough problem.
Explain the problem first.
Standard Linux has a system called the Crypto API. It's designed to be open and flexible. When Linux wants to encrypt something, say a saved destination, it usually expects to be handed the actual encryption key in its memory. It says, here's the data, here's the key, let me do the math.
But we just spent 10 minutes saying the normal world where Linux lives isn't trusted. We definitely don't want to give it the master key.
Exactly. If you load the key into Linux memory and Linux gets hacked by a malicious app, the hacker can just copy the key.
Yeah.
You never want the master keys exposed in the Linux memory space.
Yeah.
Ever.
So how does NXP solve it? If Linux needs to encrypt things but can't have the key,
They use key handles.
how does that work?
Think of it like a coat check at a fancy hotel. You don't carry your heavy coat around the party. You give it to the secure attendant, the HSE. They give you a little paper ticket, the key handle.
Okay, I follow.
When you want your coat back, you don't go behind the counter and grab it yourself. You hand the ticket to the attendant, and they retrieve it for you.
So in the silicon, Linux says to the HSE, please encrypt this user data using the key associated with ticket number 5.
Correct. Linux passes the data and the handle to the secure world. The HSE looks up ticket number 5, finds the actual secret key safely in its secure vault, performs the complex encryption math, and sends back just the encrypted data to Linux.
So Linux never once sees the actual key.
It never sees it. It only ever holds the ticket. And here's the best part. Even if a hacker compromises Linux and steals ticket number 5, they can't reverse engineer the key from it, and they can't take that ticket to another car. It's useless outside that specific context.
That is brilliant. It solves the usability problem for the software developers without compromising the hardware security.
It allows the car makers to use standard off-the-shelf Linux tools and apps while keeping the military-grade hardware security completely intact behind the scenes.
Now let's talk about performance. Because adding all these layers, hypervisors, virtual machines, secure world context switching, it all sounds incredibly heavy. And we know that at 70 miles per hour, latency kills.
Latency is the enemy.
If there is a lag between the camera seeing a car stopping and the brain telling the brakes to engage because it's stuck in virtual traffic.
That is the fundamental challenge of virtualization overhead. If every single time the autopilot wants to talk to the physical brakes, it has to send a message to the hypervisor, wait for the hypervisor to check permissions, and then have the hypervisor forward the message. You add microseconds of delay, and those add up.
So how do we fix it? How do we make the virtual machines fast?
We use pass-through technology, specifically something called VFIO, Virtual Function I/O.
What does that actually do?
It uses a dedicated piece of hardware on the chip called the IOMU, the Input-Output Memory Management Unit.
So much alphabet soup today.
I know. But essentially, it allows the hypervisor to safely step out of the way. The hypervisor configures the IOMMU and says, okay, virtual machine 1, the autopilot, you are granted permission to talk directly to this specific physical peripheral, the braking controller.
So it bypasses the middleman entirely.
Yes. Once the connection is approved, the data flows directly from the virtual machine to the hardware. It gives you what we call native performance.
So it's as fast as if the virtualization wasn't even there.
Exactly. But it's still safe because the IOMMU hardware is standing guard. It watches the direct connection to make sure the autopilot doesn't suddenly try to send a command to the radio or the engine block. It enforces the strict boundaries without slowing down the authorized conversation.
So we get the absolute safety of isolation with the blistering speed of bare metal processing.
That is the holy grail of real-time embedded systems in automotive.
Okay, we have covered a massive amount of ground here. We have the physics of the eyes from onsemi, dealing with photons and flicker, and we have the architecture of the brain from NXP, dealing with secure worlds and hypervisors.
The two halves of this supercomputer.
Let's try to bring this all together. Let's integrate it into a real-world, high-speed sequence to see how it flows.
Let's build the complete picture from end to end.
Okay, scenario time. Our car is driving autonomously. It's exiting that dark tunnel we talked about earlier.
Okay, step 1. The onsemi hyperlux sensor is active. It is physically capturing the scene. It's using that super exposure technology we discussed to capture the blinding bright sky and the dark shadows of the tunnel wall simultaneously without ghosting.
And it's also mitigating the flicker from the LED traffic light at the intersection ahead.
Right. It spots a pedestrian stepping out from the shadows near the exit. The sensor array converts those millions of photons into a clean, raw, 8.3 megapixel digital data stream.
Then what?
Step 2. That massive stream of raw data travels over the car's high-speed internal wiring network directly to the NXP central vehicle processor.
The big brain receives it.
Right. The hypervisor sees the data arriving.
Right.
It knows, based on the hardware port, that this data belongs strictly to the autonomous driving virtual machine.
Because of the IOAMU.
Exactly. It uses VFIO to route that massive data stream directly into that specific VM's memory, completely bypassing any software bottlenecks.
Step 3. The autonomous driving VM, running its heavy neural networks, analyzes the image frame. The AI recognizes the pattern and says, that is a pedestrian in our path. We need to initiate emergency braking immediately.
But wait, before the car just slams on the brakes based on an AI's word, we need to be absolutely sure this decision is valid and the software generating it hasn't been tampered with.
Right, security first. Step 4. The VM calls into the secure world using the SMC we talked about to talk to OPT, It asks the secure world to cryptographically verify the integrity of the AI model that just made that decision, or to securely log this critical safety event in a black box that can't be tampered with.
Step 5. Once verified, the command to brake is generated. But to make sure it's trusted by the physical brakes, the hardware security engine, the HSE, attaches a cryptographic digital signature to that braking command.
Like a digital wax seal.
Yes, proving mathematically that this command came from the legitimate, verified autopilot system and not from some hacker who broke into the infotainment screen and is spoofing commands.
Step 6. The actual physical braking controller at the wheels receives the signed command over the network, checks the signature against its own hardware keys to verify it, and then physically clamps the brake pads onto the rotors.
A car stops.
And all of that, from the photon hitting the sensor in the tunnel, through the neural net, through the hypervisor, into the secure vault for signing, and down to the brake calipers, all of that happened in what kind of time frame?
Milliseconds. Faster than you could even physically blink your eye.
That is just, it's absolutely incredible. When you break it down layer by layer like that, you realize just how much immense engineering goes into simply stopping a car safely today.
It is a beautiful, highly orchestrated symphony of quantum physics, advanced logic gates, and complex cryptography.
So what is the big takeaway here for everyone listening? We've looked at the software-defined vehicle, but it feels to me like the hardware is actually doing a lot of the heavy lifting.
That is the grand irony of the term. The software-defined vehicle is, in reality, only possible because of incredibly highly specialized hardware.
You can't just run it on a generic laptop chip.
Exactly. You need the specialized pixel architecture in the sensor to capture the reality perfectly, the vision. And you need the dedicated security silicon to actually trust that data, the brain. You cannot simply code your way out of a blind image sensor, and you cannot write software to fix an inherently insecure processor.
The hardware builds the indestructible stage so the software can perform the play safely.
That's a great way to look at it. And the future is only going to get more intense on both fronts.
Where are we headed? What are we looking at in the next 5 years?
On the vision side, from companies like onsemi, pixel sizes will keep shrinking, probably going well below 2.1 micrometers, while still maintaining that SNRI of 5.
So smaller, but just as sensitive?
Yes. We are going to see sensors that can see drastically better than the human eye in almost every conceivable condition: pitch darkness, blinding glare, complex flicker. We will likely move to even higher resolutions as the central processing power improves, maybe 12 megapixels or higher, specifically to push that detection range out even further for faster highway driving.
And on the brain side, NXP's world.
Security is going to move even deeper. With things like DICE and dynamic compound identity becoming standard, we're moving toward a world where the car knows vastly more about its surrounding environment and its own internal digital health than the human driver ever could.
It's monitoring its own DNA.
It will self-diagnose hardware faults, self-protect against zero-day cyber attacks, and self-authenticate with smart city infrastructure. The car will essentially become a highly trusted node in a massive, secure network of other vehicles, traffic lights, and road sensors.
It really fundamentally changes your relationship with the machine. It's not just a mechanical tool anymore, like a hammer or a bicycle.
No, not at all. It is becoming an active, intelligent partner. It is actively guarding your life every millisecond with a shield of cryptography and physics.
And that leads me to my final thought for you, our listeners, today. We spent the last hour talking about how we give the car eyes to perceive the world perfectly and a secure, isolated brain to build an identity and make safe decisions.
Right.
If the car has a unique identity based on its factory-born secrets and its ongoing life experience through software updates, and it makes life-or-death decisions based on vision capabilities that far exceed our own human biology.
I know exactly where you are going with this.
At what point do we stop treating the car as a simple consumer appliance and start treating it as a distinct digital entity? It has a chain of trust, it has a cryptographic sense of self through DICE, it perceives and interprets reality. It's not human, obviously, but it's certainly not just a toaster on wheels anymore.
It is a digital organism, and we, the engineers and developers, are the architects of its DNA. It is a profound responsibility.
It really is. Something heavy to think about the next time you tap that autopilot button on the highway. A huge thank you to the research team for compiling these deep dives into NXP and onsemi's architecture. This has been a deeply fascinating journey.
It was a pleasure to break it down with you.
And thank you for listening. As always, we will catch you on the next deep dive. Safe driving, everyone.